there. Welcome to Fireside with Peter Adkison on Gen Con TV. On this show, we go in search of the untold stories behind your favorite games. And this season, we have teamed up with the Dungeon Masters Guild, and they are introducing us to all sorts of new talent, people who are working on bringing fresh perspectives to Dungeons and Dragons. So our guest today is Hannah Rose. Hannah's worked on a number of 5th edition D&D products, including College of the Opera, Cartographer, Mythic Odysseys of Theros, Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, and Ancestry and Culture. So lots of cool stuff to explore and to cover. So Hannah, thank you for joining us on Fireside.
Thank you for having me.
It's so good. How you doing today?
Doing good. Smoke's not too bad here, so...
Yeah, Hannah and I were comparing notes. We both happen to be in the same city. So here in Seattle, and it's pretty darn smoky.
It's supposed to rain tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that.
That'd be great. Yeah, so. Well, let's get to you. What I like to do on this show is not just talk about your products, but talk a little bit about you personally. Like, where were you raised? Where did you grow up?
I grew up here in Seattle, native Seattleite, and ended up going to college in California and then moving back here.
What did you study in college?
Actually studied computer science and math. Took quite a few humanities and literature classes, but majored in joint math and computer science, and then worked in the tech industry for a while before I rediscovered my love of writing and editing and turned D&D stuff into a career.
Hannah, your life story sounds so much like mine. I was started off in history and ended up with a computer science degree that was it was so new in the 80s that it was run out of the math department at the college I went to, and I worked there in tech for a few years, and then it's like, okay, I want to start a game company.
Yeah. I loved the place I worked at and the people, and then at a certain point I was just thinking about games and designing games all the time, and it was like I want to stop banging my head against a wall and debugging and get to design things. So
yeah, debugging is the worst. Why can't it just work like right off the bat? I don't understand.
Debugging your own code's better than other people's code, though.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. It's yeah, it was fun, but I'm glad I got out of it too. So are you glad you made the jump?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of pros and cons. Sometimes I miss having a full-time job because there are a lot of challenges to being freelance.
Right.
And I'm lucky to be able to have the stability to be freelance, both from having worked in tech for a while and saved up some money, and from having a partner who has a full-time job and health insurance and all of that. But the flexibility is great. Getting to work on stuff I'm really excited about is great. Getting to collaborate with really talented people, with friends, with passionate, skilled writers that's the best part.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Okay, so when did you start playing Dungeons and Dragons?
I started towards the end of high school. So I was about just turned 18. And I'd known some people who played. I'd always kind of been interested, but I'd never been invited to play a game. And then I started dating the person who is now my partner, and he was like, well, you like theater, because we met through doing theater, you like math. I think you would really like playing D&D with me and my friends. And I started playing with his group. We were playing 3.5.
Nice. That's a good place.
Yeah.
Good place to start. Yeah,
it was a good place to start. I never looked back. Basically, I played throughout college with a group of friends in college from level 3 through level 20 plus. We had a 3-year campaign.
Right.
And that was kind of my main social life in college. So it was really good.
Now, when you say you had your own, when you said your campaign or like your DM, like were you GMing right from the beginning, or when do you?
Mostly I was playing. So I played in kind of our home group with my partner and his friends, where I got introduced to playing D&D, and then I went to college and had a group of people in my year and the year above. And so we played for 3 whole years, basically, this same campaign. And
So,
that's amazing.
so when you first got introduced to D&D, was it like this immediate, oh my God, sort of moment, or did it take you a while to warm up to it, or what?
More towards the first one. It wasn't like, my life was changed the minute I, created my first character sheet, but it was...
This is a safe place, Hannah. You can say that. You can admit that if you like.
I mean, it was. I just didn't know it yet. Yeah, it absolutely was. But both the game itself and the community really is a synthesis of a lot of my different interests in things that might be considered more humanities, history, writing, editing, storytelling, acting, and things that are a little crunchier with math and science and strategy and design. And so I enjoy both aspects of those as a game, and I find that it really combines a lot of my different interests.
Fascinating. So did you so have you played the edition since then? Did you move on to 4th edition later, then 5th edition?
So that was actually during the 4th edition era. So, okay. But the group I played with still played on like 3.5. And yeah, then when the D&D Next playtest came out, so it would eventually become 5th edition, I DM'd my first campaign using that system to test it out. We really liked it. And 5th edition came out. And yeah, we love it. We think it's a great balance between, elegant design, smooth storytelling, streamlined, with still with some opportunity for crunch and mechanics and whatever subsystems you want to add, but not too many of them.
Right. That's great. That's good. So so do you find yourself now that you're professionally working on D&D, do you still play a lot, or do you find yourself working on it and not playing?
Luckily, I still get to play a lot, and that's been really important to me, to still have it be something that I enjoy and that's personal. And I still have a game. Right now we have 2 games that are just private home games and not on stream. I love playing D&D on stream with people and with folks I wouldn't get to, who don't live nearby, who I wouldn't get to play with otherwise. But having a private home game or 2 is so important to me to just enjoy it. Not entirely separate from being a designer, because that's, I'm always thinking about that. But yeah, to really get to enjoy it and experience it from the perspective of, mostly for me, a player. A lot of designers I know are mostly DMs, and I'm lucky to have a partner who DMs a lot. So I will DM, but mostly I get to be a player.
Right. Oh, well, that's great. That sounds fantastic. Yeah, I think it's it's important to keep playing the games that we make. Yeah. I
can only handle like a maximum of 2 games a week, though. That is all like the concurrent narratives I can manage.
No, that makes sense. You can't. I mean, I still play on a regular basis, but I don't play. There's no game I play in every week. I have one game that I play every other week, and then a couple other games that seem to be a little less fixed than that, kind of all over the map.
Always that scheduling challenge, right? Even these days.
So how what sorts of we'll get onto your professional stuff here in a minute.
No, this is the fun part. Yeah,
you got to cover the basics here. We got to. So what are the parts of D&D that you like? Like what classes, ancestries do you like to play?
So 2 answers. One is that I like to play a variety, first of all. I have played every class in 5th edition except the Artificer, which I will get. It's newer, and I will get to it. So I played every class in 5th edition, a variety of subclasses, and I like, getting to try out characters who are really different in personality and in build. I think as much as I have loved, I've had a barbarian character I played, and I loved her. I loved role-playing her and her story. I got a little bored in combat, despite my best efforts to be creative. And so I do like playing spellcasters. My characters right now, who I both really love, are a Goblin Druid, who is a gardener, So I played them on a one shot and then brought them into this longer campaign. They were a gardener in the city of Waterdeep, and
Nice.
just wanted to hang out with their plants and garden, but it can be a little hard being a goblin in Waterdeep and not getting recruited by Xanathar or any of the other thieves guilds.
Right. Yeah. Like, you ever thought about moving out into the country? I mean,
Well, we ended up getting pulled into a completely different world and getting ourselves in and out of trouble there. It's a very, very lore-heavy campaign, and all of the players are nerds in and out of character.
Right.
So it's very fun. Anyway, yes. So that character has a little watering can and a silver trowel and love spells. And then the other character I'm playing right now is a Tiefling Wizard, using the Chronergy subclass from Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. So she's all about the time magic and manipulation of time, and using those to cast both some traditional wizard spells, some stuff that I've come up with, some adaptation of mechanics that I've worked on with my DM to continue leaning into that flavor.
Nice. Do you tell your DM, hey, I'm a published designer now. I mean, I can make changes to the rules.
Well, my DM is my partner, James Hake, who is also a published designer and the lead writer for D&D Beyond. So he makes sure that my stuff is, we work together to balance it.
Right. I see. Okay. Yeah. So you can only take that so far. Right. It reminds me of working with Richard Garfield back in the Magic the Gathering days, when he would, he was famous for editing cards. Like he'd find some kid would bring him a card to sign, and he'd change the stats on the card. And is that official? And Richard said, yeah, of course it's official.
Oh my God. And now the people I know, aren't allowed to stream Magic lest it be, seen as, oh, they like this card, it must be good. So
right. It was pretty funny.
That's very good though. Yeah, they're actually Descent into Avernus, the first printing of it had an error in the credits. So when I gave away some contributor copies to people, I wrote in Will Doyle's name in the credits.
Nice. Well, let's transition into your professional involvement with Dungeons and Dragons. I want to mention anybody watching on chat. We are monitoring the chat window, so if you have a question for Lysa, I was looking at Lisa's name. Hi, Lysa. Yeah, if you have a question for Lysa, Lisa's there. Also, but if you have a question for Hannah, feel free to post it there. So tell us about the transition of getting involved with Dungeons and Dragons professionally.
Yeah, so there was so as I mentioned, my partner James does design work for Dungeons and Dragons, and he's been in the industry actually since he was in college. And we've always edited each other's writing, so I, helped him edit some of the first things he published just for fun, give it another eye, proofread. And then when we were getting to know the D&D community in Seattle, and I got on Twitter and met a bunch of people and decided to kind of dip my toe into design for fun, I was lucky enough to have some of those connections and already have a working knowledge of to have a sense of what I needed to learn in terms of the writing style and style guide and rules of D&D beyond what you use at the table, but in terms of design. So I wanted to learn that for fun. I made the College of the Opera for my friend Kelly Butler on the Opera Geek when she had tweeted, oh, this is what a College of the Opera bard, some abilities they might have, because she is a professional opera singer. And I was like, that sounds fun. I should write that up for her. And then she was like, you should publish this on DM's Guild. And I was like, well, that'd be a good opportunity to, polish it up and edit it and practice the layout.
And back up just a second. Back up a little. Like, what is College of the Opera? Explain that for anybody who's watching. We know it has something to do with opera.
So, College of the Opera is a bard subclass, a bard college. So, a player option for playing a bard where you can gain abilities appropriate to a dramatic opera singer, from using your voice to shatter enemies, to using your performance ability to capture the souls of your listeners.
Oh, captured the souls.
Yes.
That was, you were seeing if I was paying attention. Capturing souls. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
And then you have a built-in audience.
I mean, you can only hold on to one soul at a time. There is some balance there. But as a designer or player, I actually really love, I love the kind of abilities that can be used both as kind of buffs or debuffs. So you could, both for your party or for enemies. So you could use that ability to, hold on to a soul of a party member so that they can be resurrected, or you could try to use that ability on a lich so that their soul can't go back into their phylactery.
Right. Oh, that sounds great. So you started working on this, and so I also wanted to talk. We haven't talked a lot we've had a couple 3 guests so far this season, and we haven't really talked much about the DM's Guild itself. So that seems like a great segue. Well, first of all, why don't you tell us about the DM's Guild, like what it is, and then lead us into how you got involved with it.
Yeah, so Lysa, brand manager of DM's Guild, is in chat, so I better get this good.
Yeah,
so the DM's Guild is a platform where you can publish your own D&D creations for fun, to share them with the community, and you can make money. And as opposed to using the content of D&D that is available for anybody to use through the open gaming license, this is the technical part, but you can use things on DM's Guild that are Wizards of the Coast IP. So you can talk about things like Ravenloft. You could have the character Strahd von Zarovich in your product. You can use spells like Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound and Tasha's Hideous Laughter, and things that are, beholders and mind flayers, things that are otherwise restricted and not legal to use. And I find it to be a great platform to publish on, simply because there's so much built-in marketing and promotion, right? You can certainly publish things on your own, on whatever platform you like, but you could just stick it up on DM's Guild, make a few tweets about it, and if it does well, it shows up in the top bar, and that success built on itself. Right.
Now, I got the sense, though, that Dungeon Masters Guild is more than just a like a publishing imprint, if you will, and a place to sell PDFs. It feels to me like there's a real vibrant community there.
I think it's grown a lot in the last couple of years, and yeah, absolutely.
How does that work? Is there like a secret cabal meeting location where if you're if you're an adept, you get to go and hang out with the other?
Oh, well, there have been some open DM's Guild creator meetings at conventions, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe the next time Gen Con is in person, that can happen. But yeah, at PAX Unplugged, we all met up. People who were there, who are part of the DM's Guild creator community, met up at a coffee shop and just got to meet each other in person and chat about stuff they're working on. There's also a Facebook group, so people will post in that with things they're releasing, with questions, with advertisements, or I'm looking for an editor, or I am a layout designer. I can lay out your product if you want, that kind of stuff.
I'm thinking maybe I should go, revive my dreams of being a D&D freelancer and sign up for this.
I mean, hey, it's a good time for it. There are a lot of people doing stuff, and I mean, you don't need to sign up, right? You just need to, go make an account and publish a product.
Yeah, I could just well, publishing a product, that's the hard part. Like that's a simple thing. Well, okay, so hey, I want to get to some of your other products here. Cartographer, I just want to say right off the bat, I love maps. I love maps, and I will spare you the story of when I spent the entire Saturday with the TSR cartography department back in.
Oh no, I want to hear this
Yeah,
story now.
I just stumbled across him. We had just acquired TSR. I hadn't met everybody out there yet, and I went in on the weekend to see if anybody was working. You know, it's kind of like a little like, is anybody working on the weekend? You can tell, you know, it's testing the hum level of the business, right? And so I went in, and Rob Lazarati and Dennis Couth, who were the cartography department, TSR, in the late 90s, were in there, and I stumbled in there and like, oh, met them. And I told them, well, I love making maps. I always wish I could make good maps. They said, well, sit down. We'll show you how to do it. I mean, like right then and there, like, we're going to show you how to make D&D maps. And so I sat down with them, and they did. We spent the whole day helping me make maps.
That's awesome.
And then I found out later, I had no idea who I was, just some guy walking there.
Even better.
So.
I actually accidentally convinced somebody once that there was a cartography department and a cartography major at my local university, which I did not go to. I was visiting a friend and working on a map for my D&D campaign, and they were very interested in it. And I kind of said as a joke, oh, I'm a cartography major. And, you know, this fantasy map is for my final project. And let's just say it got out of control a little bit. And they were so excited about it, I couldn't bear to let them down.
Oh my gosh.
So somebody out there, at least for a time, thought that the University of Washington had a cartography department.
Oh my gosh, right. Okay, so tell us about this product, because you got a hook. Cartography is something that's a hook. What's the deliver on that?
Yeah, well, the impetus behind the project was that Devin Rue, who is a fantastic cartographer and wonderful friend, she did a lot of cartography for Critical Role. Here I have the blanket with her Taldore.
Oh my God. It's cool.
Such a fuzzy blanket, and it's such beautiful cartography work. Anyway, she came to me after I'd done the College of the Opera and said, I have a character who is a cartographer, and it's a character she plays and a character that other people can put in their games to represent her. And I want you to make a custom class for her.
Whoa. Did I catch this right? So she's published this character and say, here, put not just like, oh, you can have a cartographer in your game, but you can have me in your game.
Yes.
Oh, that's fun.
Rue the cartographer. So we drew on her real life experience with cartography and with kind of wilderness survival, which is a big part. You know, it's not just about, you can't be a cartographer sitting in an office and drawing maps in a fantasy world. You have to go out and map the land and study it.
Yeah. Hannah, like my alternate personality in a previous life, I was in the Old West. I was out in the frontier. I was measuring things and drawing maps of, you know, like pre-statehood Wyoming and Idaho. I mean, yes.
So you need a cartographer cowboy character.
I am there.
So we had a couple calls and came up with a bunch of ideas and kind of how we wanted this character to lean into the explore, you know, to have some combat abilities, but really just lean into the exploration focus and the exploration pillar of D&D and of the Ranger class.
Right. And I noticed in the write-up that you talked about ties to the land.
Yeah. I really like magic that comes from somewhere that has a source in, you know, in nature and reality and energy. So even when I play a wizard, it isn't just, oh, I pulled this scroll out of a library, could immediately understand it. I am channeling the magic of something.
Right.
And for a cartographer, for a ranger who's able to cast spells, I wanted the relationship with the land to be reciprocal. So it's not just that you are charting the land, it's that you become in tune with land, ocean, desert, wilderness,
Sure.
and you can sense it around you. And then at a certain point, you can use that connection. You've drawn a map of, a plateau, and even when you're far away from that plateau, you can look at the map and the essence of the geography and the land that you've imbued into this map, and you can use the map to scry on to view that area. Or if you're very powerful, to teleport your party to that area.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Well, I would love to play. I really want to check this out. I could see Old West style cartographer, cowboy cartographer. That would be.
Yeah.
You think I could pull it off?
Yeah. I mean, you just need the hat, and
I got one right over there. Okay, but I'm not going to leave.
I think you need an animal companion as well. Your faithful horse.
Yeah, and a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Good dog. It's weird. I play D&D. It's like one of my favorite things to ask the DM when we first roll up a character in any campaign. I was like, "Can I have a dog?" And some DMs just freak out. No, you can't have a dog. That's way too powerful. And you're like, yeah, it is really powerful to have a good dog.
One of the characters in my home game got a robe of useful items, and some of the patches on it. The patch you could just pull off, and it's a dog. So now he has a dog. I don't think the dog is going to come on adventures with us, but they don't quite have the stats for that. But yeah, our little player character dorm house now has a dog.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. So let's go on to Ancestry and Culture.
Yes.
I'm very, very interested to learn hear more about this. Yeah, so let's first of all describe it in your own words, what this product is.
Yeah, so Ancestry and Culture is a set of rules for 5th edition D&D that lets you customize your character and the ability scores of your character or the traits of your character based on both your biological ancestry and the culture you were raised in. And the kind of the core rules of it take the races in the player's handbook and divide the traits for each of those into ones you get from your ancestry, from having, elf parents or dwarf parents or tiefling parents, and from your culture. So you can be an elf who grew up in a halfling community, or a tiefling who grew up in a dwarven community. And then you can go on to use those rules to create characters of mixed ancestry and culture, to create your own cultures. I see it very much as a product for people who want to get away from the set in stone, ability score increases that are so tied to biological race of Dungeons and Dragons, and we can go into why people might want to get away from that. But for people who want to get away from that a little bit, but are unsure of how to do it in a balanced way and want to stay close to the core rules, it's a very easily understood, flexible system for making a character that is a little different, a little more customizable, and that is, wholly your own.
Right. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. It's so, and the word and ancestry is kind of like a replacement for the idea of race. So we can kind of shed some of the baggage.
Yeah, there's definitely some baggage of the word race. So ancestry in this sense refers to biological ancestry. And again, like I said, there are rules for creating characters of mixed ancestry and culture. So characters who have some of the pre-generated characters that come with the product have parents of two different ancestries. So you could have a elf parent and a tiefling parent, or a dwarf parent and a gnome parent, or any combination you like.
Right. So can you walk me through an example? Like, I don't know. Let's, the traditional AD&D half elf. Let's assume that's human, elf, let's say a human and human and elf parents, one of each,
Okay.
and a raise among elves.
Yeah. So the let me pull this up here. I actually have the document open. It's not searchable though. So your character will have traits of that ancestry. So, sorry, I'm looking for where it's organized in here. Oh, they're at the end, right? Because they're.
And you can talk, if you're worried about getting a detail wrong, you just kind of cover it conceptually if you want to.
Let me talk about elves, and we could talk about like elves and high elves, since those are those are the first example here. So as with elven ancestry, you have a lot of the things you would expect from having elven parents, or even one elven parent that you have. The age of an elf, right? You can live to be around 750 years old. You are medium size. Your walking speed is 30 feet. You have dark vision. You have the Fey ancestry that gives you advantage on saving throws against being charmed. You trance instead of sleep, right? So those are all things that are traditionally what you would expect of being biologically an elf.
Right.
And then you have cultural traits. So a character of any ancestry raised in a high elf culture, this culture, traditionally, especially as the way it's presented in D&D or in kind of high fantasy, values history and traditions, scholarship, maybe archery, dance. So that's where you get your ability score increases from your culture.
Right.
And the alignment in the player's handbook talks about, okay, elves are commonly, this alignment, half elves are commonly of chaotic alignment because they don't necessarily align with, either values of their ancestry. So kind of talks about alignment. Languages, if you grow up in a high elf culture, you can, learn common and elvish. Weapon training, knowing a cantrip. So those are the things that in the player's handbook you would get from being an elf, and here you get them from growing up in the elven culture.
Right. Well, that sounds great. It sounds sensible. And I like the idea of, splitting ancestry and culture. And those seems like good labels for it too. I think, I went through a process. I'm working on a Chaldea, a fantasy story that is based on my Dungeons and Dragons campaign going clear back to 1978. So you can imagine the list of problems I have. And so we just like, okay, we just want to expunge the word race from this, and so we kind of went with species, but I don't like, it sounds too scientific for a fantasy world. So now I like ancestry though. That's a real nice choice.
The trick with species is that it has a lot of scientific implications that don't fit with how races are or ancestries are presented in D&D. That's what I found.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think it's a really good product for people who want to stay as close as possible to the core rules. Although in the upcoming release of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, there are some rules coming out for different ways to handle ability score increases that aren't tied to race.
So I have one comment. I saw one comment in chat. I'm trying to find it here. Is there? It kind of begs the question: are there problems with? Do players have a concern of game design balance using this system, Ancestry and Culture? Like when you start taking a D&D race and chopping it up into two categories, and then say, okay, now I'm going to create a character with some of this and some of this one over here, and can it do you advise people to be careful of what sort of? I mean, I'm picturing the min maxers coming out and drones. Saying, oh, I got my half troll, half drow. You know.
Well, as you know, there will inevitably be people complaining that things are unbalanced, overpowered, underpowered. You know.
Oh my God! You wouldn't believe how many times I was told Magic the Gathering was over because. Yeah. And that was by 1995.
There will inevitably be people complaining about that. Eugene Marshall, who did all of the design and playtesting for this, made a concerted effort to ensure that things were as balanced as, honestly, I think they ever are in a game design system. And there, as really with anything that is a player option, people could pick an ancestry and pick a culture so as to optimize their traits in a certain way. All of the ways that races were divided up into Ancestry and Culture, about half the traits from each race fit nicely into each of those buckets. So they're pretty nicely divided up. So yes, somebody could attempt to optimize and pick a combination that that makes them better at first level. But that's definitely against the whole ethos and intention of the product. The idea of the product is you can, create the characters with the stories that you want to create.
Oh, Hannah, you should be featuring this. You should be running contests. Come up with the most broken combat you can.
Yeah, what is I think we need, people to make all of them and then put them against each other. What is the most
right.
but if you're picking, and part of someone mentioned earlier how the rules as written for ability score bonuses feel like a punishment for non-optimal character design. It's really hard at low levels to make a dwarf wizard. I have a dwarf wizard concept that I really want to play, but if you're playing it at low levels, your spell attacks and your spell saves are just really bad.
Yeah.
And some people can have fun with that, but if I like being good at what my character does. Not necessarily min maxing, but some level of optimization, being good at what my character wants to be good at.
This is why D&D is so amazing, is we have these debates, and we've been having these debates for decades. The debate about, playing a suboptimal character versus a min-maxed character, playing characters that have disadvantages built into them versus a character that is just super awesome at what they do.
It all depends on the group and the player and the DM. And one of the things I love about the design philosophy for 5th edition in particular is very much, and I think that Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford have talked about this a little bit, but that the philosophy isn't, okay, we are going to design so that the, most min-maxy players who want to break the rules absolutely cannot break the rules. These rules are unbreakable because, first of all, you just can't do that.
Yeah, you can't.
But also because that doesn't lead to good design.
Yeah.
And so the style of writing for adventures and for player options is good. We want these things to be pretty balanced, but we're not assuming worst intentions from the players.
Right.
So I think, Ancestry and Culture is very much like that, where the point is that if you want to play a dragonborn monk or a gnome or a dwarf wizard, you can do that and feel just as good at your monk abilities or your wizard abilities as your friend the high elf wizard.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, it's funny. The min-maxing, yeah, it's all part of the culture of this lovely game. All right. So now what was your role in this project? What did you do on this product specifically?
Yeah, so I was brought in after a very successful crowdfunding campaign to edit this project by the designer Eugene Marshall. So his kind of publishing operation, Arcanist Press, he wanted to make the product as polished and kind of as official feeling as possible, right? Get it get it as precise and well worded and close to the official rules, and usable, because again, it's very much for people who want to stick as close to the official rules as possible, but get away from both the issues of biological essentialism and the feeling of being penalized for playing, against archetype of a race. So he had seen that I worked on a bunch of wizards things, and I would say my reputation as an editor is definitely to have things be polished and as official feeling as possible. So I was like, this is a good fit. And I edited those core rules and the 2 adventures that came out with the product.
Fabulous. That's great. All right, is there anything else you want to say about Ancestry and Culture before you go on to?
I think that's that. There are a lot of, it is certainly one among many options for different ways to handle race. There is if you're kind of unsure, I just mentioned biological essentialism and what that is, why it's important, why people feel that race in D&D is problematic. There is a 50-page free preview of Ancestry and Culture, and that includes the entire opening section, which talks about why this is important and brings up some of this research. The designer is actually a professor of philosophy, and definitely brings his skills to bear there in writing a very accessible primer on quoting a lot of people who have done a lot of work on this, about why I think the community is leaning towards alternate rules.
Right. That's great. Okay, I'm going to go on. I'm going to talk about Mythic Odysseys of Theros, because this is a tie to Magic the Gathering, which is, the 2 greatest games ever made are Magic and D&D. We can squabble about which one is
the world's most popular card game.
Yeah. Those are the 2 best for sure. And this is a tie-in to that in some sense, right? Theros is one of the, I suppose, one of the planes that some planeswalker found. I don't know what is that the idea?
I don't come from the Magic side, so I've played Magic some, but I am not the resource for Magic lore. I do know that Theros is a plane in a Magic the Gathering setting, and it is heavily inspired by Greek mythology. In fact, Peter, I'm sure you know some of the designers on the D&D team are Greek mythology and ancient Greece history buffs, so they definitely brought a lot of their knowledge into that.
That's great. So what is it? It's like a campaign setting, like it has a map of the planes and here's what's where and all this sort of stuff, or like what?
It's a lot of things. It definitely is a setting, right? Bringing the world of Theros into D&D so you can set your games in this very heroic, I say, leaning into, right, the heroism. Heroes in Theros are decidedly not average everyday people. They are touched by the gods in some way. They're, I really, really love the mechanics of Theros. There are, player options for playing Satyr or Centaur or, thinking of the word, Leonin, lion people characters. And there's a new background. There's some material guidance on writing adventures, but a lot of it is lore, and there is a piety system. So there's a section on each god, and there are mechanical benefits your character will gain for being pious to a certain god.
Okay.
So it is the best kind of design where the mechanics support the flavor and narrative.
Oh, that's nice. That's great. So does it get into, now I know I'm putting you on the spot because you're not you've admitted, you've come clean that you're not a Magic the Gathering.
I have never claimed to.
You're not a Pro Tour player of Magic. does it deal with some of the concepts that are inherent in the card game, like the colors of magic and planeswalking and stuff like that?
Both Theros and Ravnica are written more from an in-world perspective, right? So there's not, okay, these spells channel different colors, or this god, or this location is full of red mana, but I would say it does draw, especially for Theros, very heavily on the lore and the novels of that world. So there are a lot of novels set in Theros, and the book, in fact, quotes from some of them that really helps kind of set the stage for this heroic fantasy, mythology-inspired setting.
I wonder if, because that Wizards took the same sort of approach with Ravnica setting, right? I mean, it's not Ravnica, sorry. It's not really, it's kind of skirting the question of how mechanically, if you wanted to, I'm curious what Wizards is providing, if anything, for the player who wants to run a D&D style camp in a fantasy role-playing game, D&D, using D&D rules in a Magic the Gathering plane, like Theros, and then what happens when a planeswalker shows up? Maybe I'm just too much of a power gamer, epic gamer.
Yeah, definitely. The planeswalkers are, incredibly powerful beyond the level of the average D&D party. And I think Ravnica gets into that a little more than Theros, because you have characters like Jace. Lysa mentioned in chat that on the DM's Guild there are creators who've used those Magic the Gathering mechanics to blend those with D&D magic systems and D&D spell slots. So yeah, I think the official design from WotC focuses more on the lore than getting then kind of creating an alternate magic system and the planeswalking. There's definitely some complicated multiverse lore with the multiverse of D&D and how that intersects with the other planes of magic, and the planeswalkers, the only people who could go in between those. And then you have other IPs that are now part of the official setting and things tie in. Yeah, so I'm sure there are some very complicated design docs somewhere.
I just want to see a greater god and a planeswalker go at it, like see who wins.
Oh, that would be so good.
Yeah, right. Okay, I feel like I've kind of sent this discussion away from probably the part of this project you'd be most comfortable talking about. So let's try to get back to what did you enjoy working on in this project? Like what was the piece of it that you excited about?
So when I first heard about this project and was asked to edit, I was like, cool, this will be fun, like Greek mythology setting, cool. It's not like something I'm personally super excited about. I have friends who are into it, And then I got into editing it, and I was editing towards the beginning, so a lot of the character options, the lore, the introduction to the setting itself, the piety, systems for the different gods, backgrounds and races, and every supernatural gifts is a big part of Theros. Your character starts again in this set apart from normal mortals with some kind of supernatural gift. And I was like, oh, I want to play this. Oh, I have an idea for this character. Oh, but I want to play this character too. And so as a player, it was so exciting. And it was just, really masterful world building and design. That's always such a pleasure to work on, to really take something and polish it and get to go back and forth with a couple of the designers or other people on the editorial team a little bit and say, how do we want to do this? Is this thing presented well? Where we took the Triton race from Volos, I believe, and reprinted it in Theros as applicable. The flavor, the lore is a little bit different. So I was kind of adapting that so it felt appropriate to the setting, but still consistent.
Right. That's great. That's good. That's great. I want to point out, Lysa has added some, thank you, Lysa has added that on DM's Guild, there are creators who've taken a shot at a more Magic the Gathering inspired magic system versus as opposed to D&D spell slots. So, so if somebody is watching this later on YouTube without the chat, they can get that little hint as to where to find some of that sort of material. Real quick before we run out of time here, Explorer's Guide to Wildemount.
Yeah, so gosh, speaking of campaign settings and getting to work with amazing designers, Wildemount was a dream project, and that was also one of the things that first kind of set me on this freelance path, because I started working on the project very early in a very initial editorial capacity, where I helped kind of format things that were being sent into Wizards, since it was a collaboration between Wizards and the folks at Critical Role. So there were 4 writers, including Matthew Mercer, the DM of Critical Role, lead designer, and then 3 other writers who worked on the book. And so I kind of took an early pass at some things from a high level, and then ended up doing an in-depth copy edit on about half of the book. So it was, oh God, it's always so amazing to work with talented, creative people who are really kind. And this project was the epitome of that, but everybody was so passionate about making this book and about creating something that would be wonderful for people who are familiar with Critical Role and people who knew nothing about Critical Role. And that was just the feeling throughout making this, throughout editing this, that sometimes the work was really hard, but I knew people were going to love it. We just poured our hearts and souls into that project completely. And it was amazing to be part of it during such a long stretch of the development process.
Is there anything you want to point to within the product that you found particularly exciting?
Gosh, I mean, there's so much lore. Every section in the continent of Wildemount is detailed with history, with plot hooks, with important NPCs. Some of the magic items are really cool, actually. I haven't explored those as thoroughly, and I think we're hoping some of them maybe might appear in the campaign soon. I don't have any inside information on that. I just think it'd be really cool if they showed up.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and oh God, anything in particular I could point to? It depends on people's interests, but just of any kind of D&D book to read cover to cover, a campaign setting would be my pick. And I think this one is just, I mean, I worked my butt off editing the Gazetteer, essentially, the section on each of the different regions.
We have a question from chat from Levamote. How long was the development process?
God, end to end. So the development process for D&D hardcover books is usually at least 2 years. I think probably for Matt, for when he started working on it to when it was published, it was even longer than that, maybe more like 3 years. And
plus probably his years of creativity.
Absolutely.
You're doing a campaign setting, there's the years before it becomes official.
Yeah. And he has more notes than on all of these places than even could fit into this book. His notes are incredibly detailed. So yeah, I was involved with the dev process. Is that? Now I'm looking at the timeline. Now I have to look. I think my actual work on it was probably about 10 months. But I first started and first heard about it a little over a year before it was announced.
Right.
So it was a very long process of, this is so exciting and I cannot talk at all about this to anyone.
Hey, we are almost out of time. I want to give you a chance to give one quick shout out. Says Lysa Penrose is in our chat, especially. You do a YouTube channel with her and Celeste Conowitch, right? Who was on our show a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we do a Twitch show. So a monthly Twitch show called D&D Community, and we're on both Lisa's channel and the official D&D Twitch channel.
Nice.
On the second Friday of every month. So we drink tea from our local nerdy tea shop. They have a Druid's blend and a Bard's blend and a Paladin's blend,
Nice.
and all sorts of other nerdy teas. So we drink tea and chat about Dungeons and Dragons and
Nice.
What's going on in the community and our games and design world.
Well, that's great. That's fabulous. I watched a couple episodes to kind of bone up, and it's a delightful show. And all three of you are very smart and great to listen to. Hey, I have one more question I want to ask you before we close out the show. So what, it's more of a esoteric sort of question. It's like, so what do you want to bring to this great game? This game is so amazing, goes clear back for 50 years, and a lot of great and wonderful people have worked on it over the decades. And what is it that you want to bring to Dungeons and Dragons?
I saw this question in the agenda and I was like, oh, that's a great question. And I didn't think at all about, how to hone my answer and what I want my answer to be. I think as a designer, I want to bring things that combine storytelling and mechanics really well, because I really enjoy all the pillars of D&D, and both the heavy role playing and some, nice combat. I love the role play and the storytelling, right, and social interaction, but I get itchy if I can't just go, beat up a demon every so often. So I want to bring in mechanics that marry both of those ideas, and character options, player options, things that people are excited about, and go beyond. Certainly there's a lot of work being done in the community to go beyond the hack and slash kind of murder hobo stereotype. I would say that's not necessarily reflected in most of the rules, but there's that stereotype.
Right.
And in all of the products that I work on, especially as an editor, I just want to bring as much polish and quality to really let those things thrive to their fullest potential, to refine and hone things, because there's so many wonderful ideas. Certainly my own, the least among them, that are coming from the community and from designers and the official team and everybody. And to be part of refining that and honing it into, okay, how can we take this idea and make it the best it can possibly be for people at the table, and present it in a way that is exciting and useful and thrilling to people at the table, to DMs and players.
That's great.
And help people tell stories that they want to tell. D&D is at its core really a vehicle for having fun with friends and telling stories, and I want the work I do to reinforce that.
Well, I think Levi Moat in chat has a nice book into that. I love it when a rule serves to accentuate immersion rather than break it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That seems like a great place to wrap this up at. But we're about to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that with regards to that, Levi Moat, that I find that a lot of rules that are designed to, like systems that are designed to emulate things like, shield durability or, tracking rations or things can break me from immersions. There's definitely a balance there. And I think that area is really interesting. What rules accentuate immersion without necessarily getting too granular.
Yeah, that's a good topic for a rules discussion debate at another date. So, thank you, Hannah, for joining us today. So that wraps up another episode of Fireside with Peter Adkison here on Gen Con TV. My guest next week on September 23rd will be Jackie Leong, who, among other things, produced a product called Unbreakable, which explores Asian folklore and myths, adventures in 5th edition. And but that's a whole week away. Don't worry, we have lots of other great programming here on Gen Con TV between now and then. On Friday at 2 p.m., we have table takes. On Monday at 6 p.m., we have board games with Brothers Murph. On Wednesday next week at 1:30 Pacific, we have board games with This Game Gets Dicey. And then at 4 p.m., back to Fireside with me. If you miss any of our shows, you can find all of our streams a day or so later on the Gen Con video channel of YouTube, including all the episodes we've done before with my guests from Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. Also, if you want to connect with other Gen Con fans, please join our Gen Con community on Discord. We have a server there that we are investing in, and it's really taken off and doing well for us. So come check us out there. Please remember to follow, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and tell your friends. And so with that, thanks once again to our guest, Hannah Rose, our studio manager, Marcus Mays, our producer, Derek Gooder, to Dungeon Masters Guild for introducing us to the new voices of Dungeons and Dragons, to Gen Con TV for hosting us, but most of all, thanks to you for watching.